Built beneath gigantic cliffs and protected by layers of rock and concrete, the Iranian facility was seen as virtually untouchable. A billion-dollar underground labyrinth designed to withstand any attack. For Tehran, it was a perfect shield. But that confidence crumbled in seconds. Stealthy B-2 Spirit bombers crossed the sky undetected and launched the most advanced bunker-buster munitions ever created. What had previously seemed impenetrable was breached as if it didn't exist. Explosions occurred inside the structures, transforming entire complexes into deadly traps for those inside. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And it wasn't just the power of the bombs that caused the collapse. There was a critical design flaw hidden in the very concept of these facilities, something ignored for years. What should have guaranteed protection ended up amplifying the damage when the explosions occurred internally, turning these tunnels and chambers into veritable confined pressure zones. The turning point came with the arrival of the B-2 Spirit-E, the stealth bomber specialized in underground targets. Virtually invisible to radar, it allowed for precision strikes on the most vulnerable points of these installations. The impact was immediate. Structures designed to withstand any threat ended up being destroyed from the inside out. As a result, Iranian air defenses were simply bypassed, unable to react. From day one, it was clear that the presence of the B-2 meant the neutralization of the underground complexes. The main targets were critical facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, hit by GBU-57 bunker-buster bombs, MOPs, weighing approximately 13,600 kilograms and with a penetration capacity of up to 60 meters. These weapons pierced reinforced concrete and detonated inside the structures, causing devastating damage. Furthermore, tunnel entrances and strategic access points were also affected, further compromising the operation of these bases. In the following days, the attacks expanded to other fortified targets, including ballistic missile installations in Tehran, Semnan, and Khuzestan, consolidating a campaign focused on eliminating the country's most protected infrastructure. B-2 bombers used JDAM bombs weighing approximately 900 kilograms to destroy tunnel entrances. Life support structures were hit with pinpoint accuracy, one after another. In just 72 hours, a total of 1,700 strategic targets were hit with absolute precision. Furthermore, exactly half of these targets were directly underground installations. This wave of bombing clearly demonstrated how quickly operations against underground structures can produce results. The initial effects of the attacks on the ground also revealed a rather shocking picture. Military activity in Iran's so-called underground missile cities dropped dramatically after the United States established complete air superiority. Bombers began continuously patrolling these bases, making any launcher emerging from the tunnels an immediate target. In practice, this strategy neutralized a multi-billion-dollar project that depended precisely on protecting the subsoil. Field reports, such as those from the Wall Street Journal, reinforce that the concept of hiding critical assets deep underground failed in the very first days of the conflict. As a result, the impact on Iranian capabilities was direct. Underground stockpiles began to be depleted rapidly, and the numbers make this clear. Between the end of February and mid-March, approximately 585 missiles and about 1,500 drones were launched. Although these seem like high quantities, they represent a sharp drop compared to the beginning of the operation, when daily capacity revolved around hundreds of launches. Estimates indicate that strategic missile stockpiles were reduced by up to 80% or 90% in a short time. In addition to reduced stockpiles, a significant portion of the remaining arsenal has become unusable. With tunnel entrances destroyed and structures collapsed, many systems have become isolated and inaccessible. What was once a functional deterrent network has become, in practice, a collection of unusable facilities. In response, the United States expanded its strategy. Following the opening by the B-2 bombers, B-1 bombers joined the operations, signaling a new phase of the campaign. Images from RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom showed modifications to the B-1B Lancers, Ihadal Tatuanatwaidarnians, with the removal of components associated with cruise missiles, indicating an adaptation for new missions. The message was clear. The offensive would not only continue, but would be intensified to completely eliminate what remained of Iran's underground military capabilities. In place of those removed launchers, far more destructive munitions were being installed. JDAM bombs weighing approximately 900 kilograms, capable of shaking the ground, were being loaded onto the aircraft. Media coverage of these preparations was interpreted very clearly by military experts. The administration in Washington was preparing to deliver the final blow against Iran's military command centers. As part of this plan, following the B-2s, the B-1s have now initiated operations. These aircraft, now in the field, are in fact strategic forces in their own right. They possess an extraordinary weapons carrying capacity of 34 tons. They can also reach supersonic speeds and lock onto their targets in a matter of seconds. These aircraft were specifically designed to penetrate reinforced bunkers. They function like relentless demolition machines against military centers. With the entry of the B-1s into operations, the situation on the ground became even more critical for Iran. Hidden tunnels in the Hormuz and Baharistan regions began to be hit with unprecedented intensity. Hormuz base was truly devastating. The support buildings and entrance gates that kept the facilities operational were destroyed in seconds. Soon after, B-1s appeared in Baharistan and attacked the region's surface infrastructure. The deep tunnel lines also suffered severe damage, virtually impossible to repair. These precision strikes significantly reduced Iran's remaining ballistic missile capabilities. All of the country's military resistance on the ground was virtually dismantled. JDAM bombs sliding toward their targets from the B-1s demonstrated flawless performance. A single JDAM bomb, locked on with millimeter precision, was one of the cornerstones of this success. These bombs can instantly collapse tunnel entrances thanks to their penetrating power. This collapse prevents the missiles stored inside from ever seeing the light of day again. As the facilities become inoperable, the billion-dollar inventory inside also becomes completely useless. This military tactic renders Iran's much-vaunted missile cities virtually unusable. However, at this point, the same question echoes in the minds of military experts and strategists. How did these tunnels, presented as the most secure structures in the world, become such easy targets? To find the answer, it is necessary to examine the structural characteristics of the facilities built by Iran. These projects, erected with enormous budgets, actually contained significant flaws. Modern warfare technologies were not taken into account in the design of these structures. Presented as engineering marvels, they possessed structural and extremely lethal weaknesses that were not apparent from the outside. In fact, Iran's underground strategy was a very old state project, which had been developed over generations. The foundations of this logic were laid during the difficult years of the Iran-Iraq War. Over time, these structures were continually expanded to protect the country's nuclear program. These complexes, known as missile cities, were carved into the heart of rugged mountains. The tunnels were designed to reach depths of between 80 and 100 meters below ground. The structures stood out not only for their depth, but also for their high-performance concrete. With a labyrinthine architecture, their purpose was to serve as a shield against any type of aerial attack. They were built with detours every 50 meters to cushion the effects of a possible explosion. Instead of straight shafts, they consisted of extremely complex and difficult-to-navigate passages. The entrances were designed in a triangular shape to avoid aerial detection. These entrances were cleverly hidden in the most isolated spots on the mountain slopes. Behind all this engineering effort was a single strategic objective: to completely conceal critical missiles from air attacks and advanced satellite surveillance. However, no matter how deep these systems were underground, they still depended on the surface. And that's exactly where Iran's first major mistake began. Although the tunnels themselves were tens of meters deep, the entrances connecting them to the outside world remained on the surface. The United States' precision-guided bombs came into play at precisely that point. The clearly visible surface structures were detected within seconds and destroyed one by one. The second critical move was to completely sever that connection to the surface, hitting access routes and ventilation systems. The ventilation systems, which served as the lifeline for the facility, were destroyed by bombs falling from the sky. The collapse of these life support systems eliminated any chance of survival for the personnel in the deep tunnels. However, the factor that truly accelerated this collapse and went down in history as the biggest mistake was another. These secret networks could easily be exposed by U.S. drones and surveillance aircraft. No matter how deep underground the Iranian regime hid, it was still vulnerable to superior intelligence. The exact coordinates of the tunnel entrances were determined with millimeter precision in a matter of moments. High-resolution satellite imagery, monitoring the planet from space, was in constant operation. Unmanned aerial vehicles, gliding silently through the sky, instantly detected even the smallest launcher. This real-time data stream greatly facilitated the work of combat aircraft. As soon as the launchers emerged from the tunnels, they were immediately identified and neutralized. Meanwhile, as the operations progressed, another reality on the ground made the situation even more critical for Tehran. Iran was not only storing missiles and drones in these secret facilities. Far more sensitive targets were hidden in the deepest parts of these carefully camouflaged networks. The most dangerous components of the nuclear program, which posed a global threat, were also there. The Fordo enrichment facility was, in practice, the center of this nuclear capability. Built approximately 100 meters deep inside the mountain, the facility housed 1,044 centrifuges. It also stored stockpiles of highly sensitive enriched uranium. Alongside Fordo, the Natanz complexes also occupied a central position in nuclear enrichment activities. That is precisely why the United States and Israel developed a multi-phase strategy targeting these facilities. The attacks were the result of extremely meticulous planning, far beyond a simple bombing raid. The first stage of the strategy involved GBU-57 bombs dropped by B-2 aircraft. Critical structures within the nuclear facilities were directly hit, and the next step consisted of completely sealing the tunnel entrances through intensive bombardment, making access virtually impossible. The large magnitude explosions may have caused significant damage to the uranium stockpiles inside these complexes, and reports based on field sources indicate that the regime had extremely limited access to this material. At the same time, the fragility of Iranian air defenses became evident. Systems that consumed billions failed to respond effectively, allowing bombers like the B-2, B-1B, and B-52 to operate with almost complete freedom. This air superiority exposed a fundamental flaw. The underground networks, designed as invulnerable shields, could not withstand modern bunker-buster munitions. The result was a strategic collapse. The doctrine based on underground installations, built up over years, became one of the regime's biggest mistakes. What once symbolized power and deterrence came to represent vulnerability, with inaccessible structures becoming predictable targets. With the continuation of joint operations, the remaining targets, tunnels that still house missiles, drones, and strategic materials, tend to be neutralized. However, the impact goes beyond the battlefield. These complexes also functioned as logistical and command centers, that supported Iran's network of allies in the region. With their destruction, the capacity for supply and coordination has been severely reduced. This is already beginning to be reflected in practice, with signs of a decrease in the frequency of attacks and greater caution on the part of allied groups, given the uncertainty about resource replenishment. Even so, the risk has not disappeared. Iran retains remaining capabilities and could use them to prolong instability in the short term, keeping the regional scenario tense. The scenario is now moving towards a decisive point. Either the conflict loses intensity as Iranian capabilities are exhausted, or it enters a new phase, with the United States further expanding operations to completely eliminate what remains of the military infrastructure. The strategic balance has already shifted, but the outcome remains open. Even so, Washington maintains that, at the end of this process, it will find an adversary incapable of provoking regional crises instead of a dangerous Iran. And you, what do you think about this? When should these operations end? Will the United States truly succeed in completely depleting Iran's underground and surface military resources? Don't forget to share your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching.